The night exploded into chaos at 2:58 a.m. when a brick shattered the bedroom window of Daniel and Emily Carver's modest home in the sleepy subdivision of Crescent Hollow. Glass sprayed across the hardwood floor, glinting like jagged stars under the moonlight that poured through the gaping hole. Emily, 8 months pregnant and already restless, jolted upright in bed, her screams slicing through the stillness. Daniel, bleary-eyed and shirtless, lunged for her, his heart hammering as he shielded her from the shards. "Stay down," he barked, his voice raw with panic. Outside, the world was silent again, too silent save for the faint crunch of footsteps retreating into the dark. Someone had targeted them, and as Daniel's gaze darted to the brick now lying ominously on their rug, a single word scratched into its surface sent ice through his veins: comply. Crescent Hollow, a tidy North Carolina enclave of manicured lawns and pastel mailboxes, had always felt safe, predictable until it wasn't. Daniel, a wiry man with a logistics background and a quiet intensity, had moved here with Emily 2 years prior, chasing a slower life after the grind of city living. Emily, a soft-spoken artist with a knack for watercolor landscapes, had fallen for the neighborhood's charm. The oak-lined streets, the friendly waves from porches, the promise of a community to raise their soon-to-be-born daughter. But beneath the surface simmered a tension they'd underestimated, embodied in one woman, Margaret "Maggie" Voss, the iron-fisted enforcer of Crescent Hollow's Homeowners Association. She wasn't the president anymore, ousted after a spat over a neighbor's unapproved gazebo, but she didn't need a title. Maggie ruled through sheer will, a specter in a faded cardigan who prowled the streets with a notepad and a vendetta. The brick was just the beginning. By 3:07 a.m., Emily's breathing turned sharp and shallow, her hands clutching her swollen belly as she whispered, "Dan, it's happening. Labor." For days early. Daniel's mind raced, hospital bag by the door, keys in his pocket, their Jeep parked out front, but the brick gnawed at him. This wasn't random. He grabbed Emily's arm, steadying her as they stumbled through the glass-strewn room and out into the frigid night. The air bit at their skin, their breaths puffing in frantic clouds. Crescent Hollow lay hushed, the kind of pre-dawn quiet that felt like the world holding its breath. Daniel clicked the Jeep's remote, headlights flaring, but as he yanked the driver's door open, a sickening hiss stopped him dead. The front left tires sagged flat, a vicious slash carved through the rubber. He crouched, fingers tracing the deliberate cut, and bile rose in his throat. Someone had struck when they were most vulnerable. Emily in labor, their escape crippled. "Damn!" Emily's cry snapped him back. She leaned against the passenger door, her face twisted in pain, one hand gripping her stomach as a contraction hit. "It's too fast." Panic clawed at him. The Jeep was useless. He scanned the street, no lights flicked on, no neighbors stirred. His phone shook in his hand as he dialed 911. "My wife's in labor. Someone slashed our tire, please. Send an ambulance." The dispatcher's calm voice promised help in 10 minutes, but each second stretched into eternity. Daniel held Emily, her nails digging into his arm, her gasps piercing the night. "Hold on him. They're coming." Maggie Voss's face flashed in his mind, unbidden but inevitable. She'd been a thorn in their side since they'd arrived. It started small notes on their doorstep about the Jeep parked an inch too close to the curb, a lecture about Emily's wind chimes being too discordant, a photo snapped of their recycling bin left out an hour past pickup. Maggie was a fixture in Crescent Hollow, a widow in her late 60s with steel-gray hair and eyes that glinted like polished knives. She'd once fined a kid $5 for chalking a hopscotch grid on the sidewalk, claiming it defaced communal property. She'd reported a retiree's bird feeder to the city for attracting undesirable wildlife. To Maggie, rules weren't guidelines, they were gospel, and she was the self-appointed apostle of order. Daniel and Emily had tried to stay under her radar. Emily, ever the peacemaker, had said, "She's just bored, Dan. Let it go." But Daniel saw something dark, hair, a relish in Maggie's control, a quiet glee when she caught someone slipping. 3 months ago, she'd banged on their door at dawn, waving a tape measure and a map. claiming their mailbox leaned 2 inches into common space. Daniel had bitten his tongue, adjusted it, kept the peace. Now, with Emily whimpering beside a sabotaged Jeep, he knew peace was off the table. This was war. The ambulance arrived at 3:19 a.m., lights slashing the dark, sirens wailing. Relief flickered in Daniel's chest as 2 EMTs, Jake and Maria, leaped out, rushing to Emily's side. But as Jake knelt to secure her on the stretcher, he froze. What the? He pointed his flashlight at the ambulance's rear tire. Flat, slashed, an identical cut to the Jeep's. Someone did this now, he said, voice tight. Maria radioed for backup. Her words clipped. Second unit, Statower rigs down. Emily's screams grew hoarse, her body trembling as they laid her on the sidewalk under a flickering street lamp. Daniel's fists clenched, his gaze darting to Maggie's house 2 doors down. The curtains twitched. The second ambulance screeched in at 3:34 a.m. Emily, drenched in sweat, gripped Daniel's hand as they loaded her in. At 4:02 a.m., in a blur of chaos and sterile lights at St. Mary's Hospital, she delivered Lily Grace Carver 6 pounds, 9 ounces, a fragile miracle born of a nightmarish ordeal. No epidural, just raw endurance. Emily smiled weakly, cradling Lily, while Daniel kissed her forehead, rage simmering beneath his relief. Someone Maggie had tried to break them. He wouldn't let it stand. Back in Crescent Hollow, Daniel didn't sleep. He called Nate Rivera, a burly ex-cop who lived across the street and owned a security system with cameras angled just right. Check your footage from last night, Daniel urged. Nate, gruff but loyal, met him in his cluttered garage at dawn, a laptop glowing between them. The timestamp read 2:51 a.m. Maggie Voss, in a gray coat and slippers, crept into frame. She knelt by the Jeep, a kitchen knife glinting as she slashed the tire with surgical calm. At 3:02 a.m., as the first ambulance pulled up, she reappeared, striking its tire with the same chilling precision. Daniel's jaw tightened. She did it twice, he growled. Nate whistled low. That's felony territory, man. You pressing charges. Damn right I am. By dusk, Daniel stormed into the police station, Nate's laptop under his arm like a loaded gun. Detective Sam Kessler, a no-nonsense woman with a coffee-stained desk, watched the footage. Maggie's face was unmistakable cold, focused, a predator in curlers. Obstruction of emergency services, reckless endangerment, property damage, Sam muttered. This is airtight. At 7:15 a.m., squad cars rolled into Maggie's driveway. Nate, ever the vigilante, filmed from his porch as Maggie emerged, shrieking about fake evidence and persecution as cuffs clicked around her wrists. A search of her garage turned up the knife, flecks of tire rubber still clinging to the blade, her fingerprints a damning signature. Word spread like wildfire. By noon, Crescent Hollow's online, Furuma, usually sleepy mix of lost cat posts and barbecue invites erupted. Maggie Voss arrested. Neighbors spilled years of grievances. Fines for Christmas lights left up past January 6th. A $10 penalty for a too tall garden gnome. A citation for a dog barking at a squirrel. Claire Hensley, a single mom, posted a scanned fine from 2020. $2.50 for a trash can lit ajar during a windstorm, complete with Maggie's smug photo of the violation. The HOA board scrambled, issuing a statement. We disavow Margaret Voss. She's barred from all roles, effective immediately. Apologies flooded Daniel and Emily's inbox. Nate dropped off a 6-pack and a gruff. You took her down, Carver. We owe you. Core was a circus. Maggie's lawyer, a sweaty man in a cheap suit, spun tales of neighborhood safety concerns and poor judgment. Prosecutor Anna Lopez dismantled it, her voice cutting like steel. She slashed a pregnant woman's tire, then an ambulance, endangering a mother and child with premeditated malice. Judge Henry Rawls, a grizzled veteran, wasn't swayed by Maggie's crocodile tears. Bail denied. She sat in custody until her plea deal, guilty to felony mischief and obstruction. 18 months probation, 250 community service hours, mandatory therapy, a 500-foot restraining order from the Carvers, and a permanent HOA ban. Her house hit the market a month later. She vanished, a ghost exorcised from Crescent Hollow. But Daniel wasn't done. The brick, the tires, Maggie's reignite lit a fire in him. Sleepless nights replaying the what-ifs drove him to dig deeper. He met Claire at her cluttered dining table, where she handed him a binder of Maggie's finds, including one for a too-loud lullaby sung to her toddler. She watched us like we were criminals, Claire said, eyes hard. Daniel teamed up with Nate and canvassed the block. Jim Larson, a retiree, shared a $15 fine for a birdhouse too rustic for Maggie's taste. Rachel Kim, a nurse, produced photos of Maggie measuring her holiday lights with a ruler, muttering about excessive wattage. A petition swelled, dissolve the HOA, reclaim Crescent Hollow. At a packed board meeting, Daniel laid at bare years of Maggie's tyranny, forged violation reports, threats scrawled on official letterhead. She ruled alone because you let her, he said, voice steady as the room bristled. The board folded, dissolving the HOA that night. A new council rose, Nate at the helm, built on trust, not fines. Kids chalked sidewalks again. Trash cans lingered after storms, unjudged. Lily, nearing her first birthday, giggled at toy ambulances, oblivious to the night her arrival rewrote the neighborhood. Maggie's trial peeled back more layers. Jake, the EMT, testified. She stood in her yard, watching us load Emily, then slashed our tire column as if she were watering plants. A neighbor, Tina Brooks, saw her pacing at dawn, muttering about standards slipping. The knife's lab report her prints. Tire fragments crushed her defense. Judge Rawls' sentence was blunt. Your obsession nearly cost lives. Probation's your shot to rethink. Maggie faded, her legacy a warning etched into Crescent Hollow's lore. The block party came months Laterno rules, just potluck tables and laughter. Lily toddled with a siren-blaring toy, her parents stronger, tethered to a community unshackled. Daniel raised a beer to Nate across the yard, a silent toast to the fight they'd won. Crescent Hollow breathed free, its scars a testament to resilience, its future a blank page they'd write together. If you were the one in this story, how would you react? Would you stand up and fight back, or accept the unreasonable pressure and control from the HOA? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this VY Deo with more people. Your small action gives us the motivation to keep bringing you more intense and engaging stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next VY Deo.